Hello, I'm Burl Schwartz, and welcome to another edition of City Pulse Newsmakers. Our guest today is the president of the Lansing School Board, Gabrielle Lawrence, who many of us may know better as the She in He Ate, She Ate, City Pulse's restaurant review column that unfortunately is on a break right now since the pandemic started. But for this interview, we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to relinquish the interviewer's seat to a fellow journalist, an essayist, and a book author. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Deidre Humphreys Barker. Deidre, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm Deidre Humphreys Barker, and I'm here with the president of the Lansing School Board, Gabrielle Lawrence. And as you just heard Burl say, that she ate of the food critics column that ran in the City Pulse, which is a favorite of mine. I really enjoyed that, Gabby. It's so good to be with you today. Kids are going back to school next week. Your kids, not your personal kids, but the students.
My community's kids, yeah.
Yes, and the students that you are legally responsible for as a member of the school board and the president of the school board. And you're going back to school under a program of remote learning, and it's called, you guys actually have a name for it, Lansing Schools Reimagined. Mm-hmm. So can you tell us, give us a thumbnail sketch of that?
Sure. So our kids, the Lansing School District's kids, are going back August 31st. So the countdown is on at this point. And we decided in mid-July and announced at a board meeting, announced to our community that we would be going back in a remote learning capacity, which means the kids are not going to be going to school in the traditional sense of the word this fall. Each child in the Lansing School District has a device like an iPad or a Chromebook, depending upon their age group, and they will be engaging in screen-to-screen remote learning with their teacher. So we've gotten a lot of questions about, well, what is that? What does that mean? What's that going to look like? And what that means is the teacher is actually going to be in the classroom, and there will be some exceptions for teachers who have health concerns or familial issues or other things that prevent them from returning to the physical classroom. But by and large, the teachers are going to be teaching from their classroom, so they'll have all their materials, we'll have appropriate lighting, and we'll have access to people who know a little bit about IT. As those issues arise, they'll be able to help. And the kids will be either in their home or in another location, and they will be engaging in remote learning with their teacher.
Now that's, I saw the video hosted by Deputy Superintendent Chapman, mm-hmm. and she explained how it's going to work. That was done in mid-July. I assume there have been no changes from then?
Not any substantial changes, no. We've been fine-tuning schedules, again, based on age group and grade level for the kids. We've been troubleshooting various problems that have arisen, but no, there haven't been any substantial changes to what we announced in mid-July. And we really were mindful about announcing this plan as early as possible. We purposefully did this as early as possible because we wanted to give our families as much lead time as we possibly could. We know that this is different. We know that there are a lot of working families out there, people who count on the kids being at school 5 days a week. So we really wanted to give them a head start in making other arrangements and figuring out what their plan would be when the school year starts.
So parents can go to the Lansing School site and see this video, and they'll be up to date.
Yep, that's lansingschools.net. We've also been offering what's called a parent university. So that's a really cool program for parents who are thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with these kids at home all day? I'm not a teacher. How do I help them? What support do I give them? This parent university has also been a great resource for our parents.
And you also have something now, the new news is the learning communities mm-hmm. that students will be able to sign up for. Some 600 seats in several different locations, including like the Waldemar Nature Center and Impression 5, and even at some schools. So tell us about that.
Yep. So in our most recent board meeting, we announced these learning labs. And when we announced our remote learning plans, the three biggest issues that we heard were, where do I get a device? How do I get internet access? And what do I do with my kids if I have to go to work during the day? So the district has been working tirelessly to troubleshoot those issues. The first two were actually solved pretty quickly and painlessly. We've provided devices. We helped people get internet access if they needed it. And these learning labs have been getting a lot of focus from district staff because we recognize that childcare is a huge concern for so many families, my own family included. So the learning labs are such a great and a cool option because you can apply to be accepted into one of these learning labs, and that means your child, the children in your household, will go to whatever facility it may be. Like you said, there are several in district buildings. There are several other facilities throughout the city that we're working with, like the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA, and the kids will be in that facility doing their remote learning. So they'll have adult supervision. If they're getting meals from their school, their meals will be delivered to that learning lab. So that's another really wonderful option for our families who need that childcare provided.
So I missaid that. I said learning communities. A learning
I knew what you meant.
Yep. Well, people who are looking might not. So I just want to make sure it's clear. A learning community is a place where everybody in the environment understands that they're learning, the teacher included. But what you're doing is a learning labs. And so they're going to be there all school day.
Yep, they'll be there all school day.
And what's the difference between being in class and being at a learning lab?
So the teacher will not be instructing in the learning lab. Each child who's in the learning lab will have their own device. Like I'm sitting in front of my computer screen right now. The kids in the learning lab will be sitting in front of their device, and they will be interacting with their teacher who's not necessarily located in that learning lab.
Are there any teachers located in a learning lab?
Well, some of the learning labs are going to be located in district buildings. So the teachers who teach at Forest View, for example, there will be a learning lab in that building, and there will be teachers teaching in that building, but they will not be teaching to the kids who are in the learning lab, because the learning lab could theoretically have kids from different classes, kids from different grades who are sitting in front of their device, still doing their remote learning like all the other kids in the district.
Okay, now that makes sense. So so some learning labs are going to be in the schools. And I just want to ask you about this question of liability. So because you're a lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
and if the students are with some adult somewhere, is that not a way that the district is shifting liability onto another organization for the, not just responsibility, but liability?
Well, all of these organizations that we're partnering with have been longtime partners of ours. So they've already gone through kind of our vetting process. They have worked with us on camps or provided field trips or before school or after school instruction. So we're not bringing in any partners who we are unfamiliar with. And if the district had any concerns with any of these organizations, we wouldn't partner with the organizations because, like you said, I am an attorney. So a lot of the decisions that we make are frankly colored by my legal background, that I'm always thinking, how do we educate and take care of our students, but also how do we protect the district from running into any liability issues?
So that's one kind of liability that we've had pre-COVID, but now there's another kind post-COVID, and that's contracting the virus. And I understand one of the things that not the Republicans want to do at the federal level is to release businesses, and I don't know if this applies to school districts as well, but to release them from any liability, like if someone's in your place doing an activity and they contract the virus. So what was you thinking about that? Is that one reason we're not in school?
Sure. That's a reason why we're not in school, because yeah, I do have concerns that if students come back, but particularly if we require staff to come back in person and be around 30 kids all day long, I am definitely concerned from the district's liability perspective. But even more so, I was hearing a lot of stories and seeing a lot of chatter on social media from not our district employees, but employees of other districts who were saying that they've been advised to update their estate planning documents, their will, their trust, and their powers of attorney before they went back to school. And that just floored me. That broke my heart. And I thought, wow, under no circumstance do I want a Lansing School District employee thinking, I am taking my life into my hands when I go back to school in the fall, and I have to update my trust because of it. That just, we ask enough of our teachers. And I could not, in good conscience, ask the teachers to come back and knowingly put them at risk to contract a deadly virus and potentially bring it home to their families.
Now, you're an estate planning lawyer, right?
Yep.
I can see why that would resonate with you.
Yep.
But did you run the demographics on the teaching staff, on the instructional staff?
A lot of that is not readily available to the district because under employment laws, we're not, allowed to ask people's age or that kind of thing. But we heard anecdotally of a lot of staff members who were saying, if I'm forced to come back to school, I'm going to take an early retirement. I like to listen to the New York Times podcast, The Daily. I listened to an episode last week that I actually sent out to the rest of the board members because it was talking about what's going on in Florida. And thank God Florida and Michigan are in very different circumstances when it comes to COVID because our governor took really strong and swift action. However, Florida schools are being forced to open in person. So the Florida Teachers Union has filed action against the state of Florida saying you're forcing us to come back and these conditions are unsafe. And I sent this out to the rest of our board just to thank our administration and our superintendent for taking such strong action to protect the health and safety of our community. And I wanted it to kind of serve as an example to other districts of we could be in a situation like that, and thank God we aren't. And we're listening to the staff. We're taking every precaution to protect our kids and our staff. And what I'm seeing in Lansing, in the Lansing School District, we announced our remote learning plans. And by and large, the response that I saw was positive. And people understood why we were doing what we were doing. People understand that this isn't going to be perfect. And of course, it's not our preferred circumstance for the fall. But people recognize that we're doing the best we can, and we're doing this to protect our community.
I'm glad you said that word perfect because you also used that in the press release about the learning labs. So what would a perfect situation, accommodation look like to your mind? What would that look like?
If we're doing remote learning?
Under these circumstances.
Ideally, we would have childcare provided for each student in the district if they need it. And ideally, we would have a one-on-one tutor that's working with each child in the district all day long. That would be 11,000 private tutors. So I don't think we have that many available. But wouldn't that be incredible? Obviously, that's not going to happen. So I'm a mom of two young kids. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 9-month-old. So I know how intensely difficult it is to figure out childcare, especially in the middle of a pandemic, because you think, who should I expose my kids to? Do I keep it to only relatives? Do I hire a babysitter? Do I send them to daycare? What do I do? What's the right thing? And I know each family grapples with this. So we recognize as a district, we're going to try to help our families navigate this. We know it's not a perfect system. Like you said, we have 600 spots currently in the learning labs. We're hoping to be able to offer more spots because we have 11,000 students and 600 spots, I imagine, are going to fill up very quickly. So this is a work in progress. We're continuing to work with other community organizations and try to be able to facilitate having more kids in the learning labs.
Yeah, because that leaves like, what, 95% of the kids? My neighbor is a teacher. I was talking with her this morning, and then one of my cousins is a teacher down in Detroit. And both of them talked about relationships that they were able to form over the spring when we launched into this, which, by the way, I felt really sorry for teachers because I taught 18 years at Lansing Community College in English, primarily writing, and then online as well. And it's hard enough to do online instruction when you have a long period of time to prepare for it, but to try to do it on the fly, that's I really feel for the instruction.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
But what these two teachers were talking about is that through remote learning, through the computer, as imperfect as it is, that they were actually able to form a relationship with other people in the family. Like my cousin, it was a student who was having some problems when she was in class, but when she went home, her grandma, who she lived with, would sit with her for instruction. And then all three of them got to be, what I called earlier, a learning community. And then she said the student did so much better remotely than she was doing in class. And then across the street, Kim, she was saying the same thing, that she's like, as you said, she said, how do you eliminate those other people in the household? So she said this one student had little sisters and brothers, and they would all get in front of the computer. and so then she could do the lesson, and she said, and I would ask my student a question, and I would ask her sister and brother too.
Sure, why not? Why not?
Isn't that something? So
it's interesting that you say this. I communicated with one of our elementary school principals towards the end of the last school year, and we were emailing each other and just talking about what's going on. And she said that she actually felt more connected to her school's community than ever, because they were having these Zoom meetings and calling the families and talking to the families every day. And she said she had never felt that kind of community in her school before, and everybody was really pulling together, and it made me cry. It was just such a incredible thing to hear that, people are recognizing nobody wants to be going back to school this way, but we're in this together, and we're going to have to sink or swim together. So I've always said that the Lansing School District is an integral part of Lansing. We've got the city's back, the city's got our back, and we know however goes the school district, so goes the city. So I think this is really an opportunity for residents of the city of Lansing to recognize we got to support the district. This is going to be a really challenging year, and we got to get through it together.
And I know you have a personal investment in that because you're a product of the Lansing schools and the Lansing area. Went to Michigan State and went to Cooley for law school. And I
went to Sexton for high school.
I know you want to talk about that. Go ahead.
I'm a very proud and vocal graduate from Sexton High School. I graduated in 2000. And my husband is not from Lansing, he's from Adrian, and he's always kind of stunned that people who grew up in Lansing are constantly talking about the high school that they went to. And still, even on our Board of Education, there are two big reds on the Board of Education, and whenever there's anybody from Sexton in the audience, or we're talking about anything that ever went on at Sexton, you better believe that we're going to stop the meeting just to say, should have been a big red. It happens every single time. So I'm fully invested in this community. My husband and I have chosen to live here. We live in the Groesbeck neighborhood. As I said, I have two young kids who absolutely will attend Lansing schools, whether I'm on the board or not. And I think that we're starting to see a changing attitude towards the school district. I think we're starting to have people who are understanding that if they're going to live in the city and they're going to take advantage of all of these great services that they have, like single stream recycling and, lawn bag removal and all these different things that the city offers, then they really should put their money where their mouth is and enroll their kids in Lansing schools as well.
Now, earlier I don't know what that is. But earlier you said it's not ideal that you only have like 600 slots for your students. And what would be ideal is if you had 11,000 tutors
Mm-hmm.
to go with those students, a one-to-one relationship. But I read in your bio that, well, so it sounds like you're saying, you know, the community has a role to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I read in your bio on the school site that that you were actually in the schools and saw a community organization operating in the schools, and that led you to join that organization, and that was Junior League.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about that?
Sure. So after I graduated from Michigan State, I moved around a little bit. And when I eventually came back to Lansing, I've always paid attention to what's going on in the district. I've always paid attention to what's going on in my community. And I've always wanted to be involved and give back to my community. So I was considering different organizations to join. And the Junior League of Lansing was an organization that I was considering and I was looking at. So I started doing some research on their website. And I found out that their signature project was something called FEAST, that stood for Food, Education, and Story Time. And once a month, Junior League volunteers would go into Lansing School District elementary schools and have story time with the younger kids. They would also teach them to make a healthy snack. And when they left, they would provide a copy of the book to each kid. Now, I remember when I was in school and we would have RIF Day, Reading is Fundamental Day. And that was like the most exciting day of my life because I was and am such a big reader, and it was just awesome when they would come in and say it's RIF Day, so everybody, you get to go pick a free book. And I thought that's really an awesome project that shows a part of our community that probably a lot of Junior League members would not ever experience. So I joined the Junior League of Lansing and spent thousands of hours volunteering with the Junior League until I became a sustaining member. But whenever any kind of business or community organization supports the school district, they definitely get my attention and get my business.
Well, that's a great thing. But I want to talk a little bit more about Junior League because the other thing in our environment now is Black Lives Matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm from Detroit. So, and it's a almost 80% Black city, and the school district is virtually all Black. So I tend to see urban schools through that filter, although Lansing is a very different place. I think African Americans, Black people are about 20% of the population, and I don't know what it looks like in the schools. Can you tell us?
Sure. So the Lansing School District is what is called a majority minority district, which means it's not more than 50% Black students, but it's more than 50% minority students. It's less than 50% white students. And it's been that way for a really long time. It was that way when I was in school, and it's still that way. So we always know that as a district, we have students who deal with issues that a lot of districts do not necessarily have to grapple with amongst their student population. Like, we have kids whose maybe their parents are incarcerated, or they're living in foster care, or they deal with food insecurity, which is something that is really close to my heart, or they're homeless. We know that we have kids who deal with myriad issues. So we're always very mindful. Our staff are trained to try to recognize those issues, to try to access resources if the kids need them. I remember a few years ago, I was touring one of our elementary buildings, and the principal pointed out to me, well, this is where the washer and dryer are. And I said, why is there a washer and dryer here? And he said, well, we have a lot of families who don't have access to laundry facilities, so they can come here and do their laundry. That had never occurred to me, and that blew me away. And I thought, this isn't just school. When we talk about the Lansing School District being a family, that's the kind of thing that we mean, that we envelop our students and their families, and we are much more than just a school.
So the thing about, I looked at a few videos of the Junior League, trying to educate myself about the Junior League here in Lansing. And I do know a person who is a member of the Junior League and really just won. And that's Alexis Darasset, you know
Oh,
her?
I know her. Yep, I was texting with her this morning.
Yeah, she's
Yep.
a friend. But you know, one person didn't get me by this image of the Junior League being like a white woman, young white woman's organization. And then, and when I looked at the videos, the membership looked like that. I think I saw one Black woman. And but in this Kids in the Kitchen video, do you know that one?
Yep.
So there were several Black girls who were in attendance there. I say several, maybe I think I saw 3. I can remember 3. Which, you know, is several if you know you don't see anybody like yourself in the organization. And I know you're not the president, but how would an organization like that start to, you know, not be in like the white savior kind of position, going into a school district that's, as you say, it's less than 50% white. So, I mean, you do understand what I'm saying? I'm not trying to.
I do.
No, yeah.
I grappled with that as well. And frankly, one of the reasons that I'm no longer an active member of the Junior League is because I didn't feel that it was representative of our community. And I think that that's a problem. I think that junior leagues throughout the country are recognizing that that's an issue as well. And I know they are undertaking some efforts to diversify their membership, but it is difficult. And you don't want to say, well, okay, we have to have more Black members, so let's go recruit Black members. Because then is that kind of disingenuous that you're recruiting these people just because they're Black? I don't know. And luckily I'm not in that, I'm no longer in a leadership position in that organization, so I don't have to make that decision for them. But I understand what you're saying, that there was kind of this white savior situation that was going on, or the appearance of one. I never felt that way because I thought I'm going to go help the schools regardless. And if I'm here as a Junior League volunteer, it means that I'm also bringing dollars with me. Not only because the organization had dollars to spend, but also because the organization has a lot of people who contribute money to it and to the Junior League's projects. So I was always happy to work with an organization and work on their projects if they were giving resources and dollars to our schools.
You know, it is a very tricky situation. And that's the problem with systemic racism, which I think is what is represented there, is that people kind of understand where they're supposed to be and who they're supposed to be with. And so the Junior League understands it's supposed to be with helping out with schools and kids. And maybe they don't see the fabric of their organization. And the same thing with Black organizations. They understand where they're supposed to be. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, which is a public service sorority. And we are in the schools reading to kids. But the two don't seem to like come together. And that's problematic when you're trying to erase parts of the system that is racist, like the schools, you know, like the schools. Lansing isn't less than 50% white, so why do the schools look like that? You know, it doesn't,
Well, I know you're asking that rhetorically, but I can answer it. It's because of schools of choice. And that those laws have just been really troublesome for the Lansing School District. When I graduated in 2000 from high school, there were just shy of 30,000 students in the district. And now there are 11. And yes, there have been some changes in population in the city, but that can be accounted, that $30,000 to $11,000 drop, most of that can be accounted for through schools of choice. And I remember the first kid who I was coming up with in middle school and high school, I remember the first kid who choiced into East Lansing. And we all thought, what's going on? What is he doing? What's this about? it was so foreign to us because we never saw anyone doing that. Because if you lived in Lansing, you went to Lansing schools, end of story. And it's so different now. Which I'm getting on a whole different soapbox that you have not asked me about. But I think that's such that hamstrings so many urban school districts in this state. And, you know, considering who the Secretary of Education is and where she came from, it's no surprise that it happens in Michigan, but it's just really unfortunate.
Well, you and I are on the same page with that. And I am not a school of choice person. I'm a product of the Detroit Public Schools. And actually, I guess my story looks a lot like yours. I graduated from Chatsey in Detroit, went to Wayne State University, got both of my degrees from Wayne State. And my kids went to public school here, East Lansing Public Schools. And I just am an advocate of public education.
Yep.
So I don't understand why people would take their children out of their community schools and put them in another community school, as opposed to, you know, working on your own schools to make them what you want them.
You're preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess it's a bigger question than we can solve in this City Pulse Newsmaker. But you know, you've been on the school board. You were appointed in 2015 and elected on your own campaign in 2016.
Yep.
Then you became the board president in January of 2020. And the schools were out in March, right? So how steep a learning curve has this been?
So I remember sitting in a board meeting on the evening of Thursday, March, I think it was the 12th, because we were conducting a first round of interviews to hire our new superintendent. And I remember I was sitting next to Samson Akropi, who's our current superintendent, and he wrote a note and said, "Detroit's closing." And I thought, wow, this is so crazy. Like, what's going on? This is so crazy. And by Monday, our schools were closed statewide. It happened so quickly.
Wow.
And of course, under no circumstance did I think that in my first year as school board president, we were going to be dealing with a worldwide pandemic. Who would ever have guessed that? Luckily, when the schools were closed, kind of coincidentally, my office closed as well. So I had been going to work 5 days a week, and that stopped. So the school district needed a lot of my attention, and I was able to shift my attention from my career and give it to the school district. So it kind of worked out well that I had kind of a lot of time on my hands that I could use to address school district issues that were coming up.
Well, that's a really good thing that happened. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about you as Mrs. She Ate. And I love the way you refer to your husband, who goes with you on this, as Mr. She Ate. That's fabulous. So what are you doing to feed your food Jones while restaurants are pretty much, on a
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I cook a lot, so we always have our weekly meal plan that's written on a whiteboard stuck to my refrigerator because I'm a little bit type A as well.
Really?
I know, shocking, right? We're trying to really mindfully use our dollars when we go out to eat. So we've been really trying to support local restaurants that we love. We've been going to at least once a week. We get lunch from Bento Kitchen Cravings in Frandor. We're just really trying to support businesses that are kind of the backbone of our community, because I think about, I'm a mom, so when I buy clothes, it's generally for my kids at this time, and I don't do a lot of clothing shopping for myself. I don't really do a lot of fun shopping. My fun is to spend my money in restaurants. So I think, okay, if I'm going to spend X number of dollars, I want to make sure that it's going to stay in the community as much as possible. So we're really trying to be mindful of that, more so than we ever have been in the past.
So what are you doing at home? What are you cooking?
Oh gosh, the past week, because of the Democratic National Convention, we had a themed menu. So we had blue state, blue cheese hamburgers one night. We had AO seafood pasta, which was the brainchild of Mr. Sheed over there. I try to kind of keep it fun. We've done some vegetarian weeks. We just tried to kind of do things different. I always try to be seasonal, so we've had a lot of corn, a lot of seasonal produce, just trying to keep ourselves fed and sane and healthy.
So what are you doing for the GOP convention?
Nothing. Nothing. Not a thing. I could think of something sinister, couldn't I?
You could.
Yeah. That might be fun. I got to work on that this afternoon.
What does Trump like to eat? He's like a fast food
Steak
guy.
with ketchup.
Is that what he eats? Steak with
Yeah.
ketchup? Well, nothing wrong with steak, right?
Ugh, gosh. Probably well done too.
Well, I don't know. Is there anything more you want to tell us about the Lansing schools? I mean, you guys are really working hard. I expressed that earlier, that it's turning on a dime.
Yeah.
School district, that's a lot. Is there anything else we need to know?
You know, some people have asked me what's my hope for this year. And I think we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. We know that. So my hope for this year is that, like you alluded to earlier, we recognize the opportunities that we have this year and we take advantage of them. So for example, if this remote learning goes smoothly and is successful, maybe we don't have snow days anymore. I'm sorry, kids, but maybe we're able to, when we get a snowstorm, maybe we're able to kind of pivot and say, okay, pull out your device, we're doing remote learning. And maybe this gives people the opportunity to, if you know, there's a family on your block and they have kids in the school district, and mom and dad or grandma or somebody's at home with them during the day, maybe you bake them some muffins and go deliver it. Or you say, hey, I'm going to the store. Do you need toilet paper? Do you need a gallon of milk? We got to take care of each other. And we've got to give each other patience. We've got to show each other grace. But we also have to get out there, I mean it literally, and take care of each other. And knock on your neighbor's door and say, are you okay? Is there anything I can help you with? Our next door neighbor is in her 80s. She's been in our neighborhood since before our house was built. She's been here forever. And when we go to the store, we text her and say, I know you do Instacart or whatever it's called. We don't do that, but do you need anything? And sometimes we'll go grab her prescriptions or whatever she needs, because this is the time where we recognize we're all in the same boat and we just got to take care of each other.
Since you mentioned that, I want to ask you about your partners. And I'm particularly interested in the transportation piece. I know that's a big part of the budget that I saw, $11 million.
Yep.
And Dean Transportation provides transportation. Now there are no kids to ferry back and forth.
Right.
How do you take care of them?
Right. So Kelly Dean has been a long time incredible partner with the Lansing School District, and he actually started his career as a special education teacher in the Lansing School District. He supports the district, he supports the Lansing Promise, in particular the scholarship program that we have, and we knew when schools closed, we've got to help him take care of those employees. So we underwent a very quick planning process to start to distribute meals to our community members. And from when schools closed in March through June, we distributed about 650,000 meals to members of our community. And that's not only Lansing School District students, that's students from other districts, students who are homeschooled, but also adults in our community who don't have kids at all, who are not affiliated with the district whatsoever, but they needed food. So we offered food to whoever needed it. And families could come to about 30 sites throughout the city and pick up their meals, but also they could sign up for home delivery. So we utilized a lot of Dean Transportation employees in that way. They would deliver meals to families who needed them. And we will continue to use Dean employees for things like that in the fall. So maybe it's transporting kids to their learning labs or continuing to deliver meals to people at home. We've tried to find different uses for these employees because, again, the district doesn't want to lead to further economic instability. We're keeping all of our staff on staff. We certainly didn't do any layoffs. There's normal attrition, but we did not engage in layoffs, and we did not want to put any of our community partners in a spot where they had to do that either.
Well, what's the state saying about your funding? I saw that look.
I don't hear anything. I haven't heard anything. Luckily, we have a really good partner in Sarah Anthony. So I know that they had a vote this past week on the legislation that was coming regarding back to school. And I appreciate so much that she reached out to me to talk to me about how she was going to vote and to get my thoughts on it. We're so lucky to have her, even though she went to Everett. That's okay. I'm going to just count her as an honorary Big Red because I love her. But I even bent her ear a little bit last week that, hey, our fiscal years don't line up. Let's figure this out because we have to pass a balanced budget and we have to do it kind of guessing what our per pupil funding is going to be for the next year, which is pretty tricky to do that.
Okay, I could go on talking to you about this, but I think Burl, there's a limit to it. Hey, Burl, did you have
a lot to talk about?
I just want to say how delightful and entertaining and enlightening this was, and I'm so glad that the 2.5-year-old and 9-month-old gave you an opportunity.
I can hear the 9-month-old up there. I hope.
Oh, okay. So we really
down.
We should go. Thank you both, Deidre Humphreys Barker, who will have 2 pieces in this week's has 2 pieces in this week's City Pulse issue on both on education, and Gabby Lawrence. It's great to get to know you better in a different role. And I'm going to use this opportunity to plug He8. As I said, we suspended it. It was coincidental that Gabby's partner in crime, Mark Nixon, decided he wanted to step down from being He8. So, but I've felt that we should hold off on reviews until the world is a little more normal. I would hate to give a bad review to anybody trying to stay in business right now.
Luckily, I have about 7 years of old articles that people can go back and read on the City Pulse website.
Exactly. So
fun evening
has it been that
everyone.
long? 7 years. Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Thank you both, Gabby and Deidre, and thank you all for watching. And again, this current issue is back to school, and it's in about 200 locations for you to pick up right now. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, Burl.